What's up, guys? Welcome to In Depth. In Depth is a podcast hosted by Gary McGrath and myself, Harry Chamas. Each podcast is going to be on a very specific topic in which we give our insights and opinions as professional freedivers. From time to time, we'll bring other people in to get even a third point of view on a specific topic. Harry, I'm a full-time freediving coach. I've helped lots of people reach PBs and national records. I have a YouTube channel, Freedive Passion. I was the head of safety for the World Championships in 2016. I'm also a deep diver myself. I have 2 British national records. What else makes me awesome? I'm on the AIDA safety committee. I live in Dahab full-time as a coach, and when I'm not coaching people, I train for myself.
Hello, I'm Gary. I'm an athlete. I coach as well. I've been on the UK team in the past. I'm one of the deepest UK male divers at the moment. I've been safety diver for a number of competitions. I also teach online, mostly focusing on EQ. And I'm based in Dahab at the moment, taking a bit of time off from training, focusing on work, but I intend to be fully back in the new year, ready to chase some national records down.
And I'm sure you'll get them, bro. We're both sponsored by Chetma, and this podcast is sponsored by Chetma, so we'd like to give those guys a shout out. Chetma makes some of the highest quality, best fins in the world.
Yeah, definitely.
A lot of the top level athletes on most of the world records at the moment have been used either with Chetma bifins or Chetma monofin. And they also manufacture wetsuits as well. So it's a really great brand. If you just look at not only the performance, but the durability of these fins, you can see they're made to last. They're a solid fin. I've been using mine for a few weeks now, and I'm really couldn't be more happy with the quality and the performance out of these fins. Gary, you used them to do your last PBs, and
yeah, the fin I had before was quite a stiff, old, badly fitting plastic fin, and switching to the carbon with the foot pockets that are on the Chetma Taras, it's another world. That fin is beautiful.
Plastic. You had a plastic fin?
Yeah.
What are you talking about?
What's the glide? Yeah, the glide was...
it couldn't be plastic. Maybe it was fiberglass.
It's fiberglass. It definitely felt like plastic.
So a big shout out to the Setmat. They these days, hardly need our promotion. Every bifin's national record in pool and depth, not national record, world record is now done with the Chetma Taras.
Yeah.
But anyway, we'll do our bit. So moving on, today's topic is going to be on equalization tools that you can use. So how you would train equalization while dry. I think it's really underestimated the importance of dry training. And this podcast was very nice. Even I learned something or clarified something more clearly in my mind just talking to Gary and bouncing ideas off him and seeing his perspective on how to train EQ. And I hope you kind of
definitely. It was good to get your insights, because a couple of the tools I'd never used, and it was really, really nice to sort of get an introduction for myself on them and how useful they can be from a coach's point of view. A lot of these gadgets, they're the things that people buy when they decide to really properly get into freediving. Everyone buys them, but there's not a lot out there to show you how to use them and what they're for. So they end up sitting in the bottom of a dive bag, gathering dust.
Yeah. So hopefully this podcast is going to help to clarify what different tools there are out there and what the strengths and weaknesses of these tools are and how you can use them so you can become a better freediver. So I think no need to...
No, let's get on with it. Let's get on with the podcast. Thanks for listening.
Welcome to the In Depth Freediving Podcast, hosted by Gary McGrath and Harry Chamas. We are 2 freediving athletes and coaches, and this podcast will give you a glimpse into the world of professional freedivers. We'll cover everything from training and competitions to techniques to improve your own diving and much more.
So this week we're going to talk about EQ tools. I guess we'll start with the kind of most common one that you see. Probably the Otovent is probably the most common.
Yeah, for sure. I'd say that was the first tool that I ever started to use.
Yeah, the first tool that wasn't part of my body. Yeah, the first external tool, definitely. Yeah. It's the first one I saw. But 15 years ago, you never saw them. I mean, they only started to become. There were a few key people using them.
Yeah.
That sort of switched onto them quick. Mostly the Italians, Andrea and Federico and stuff.
Yeah, they had to be the pioneers with that. Just in general, not that long ago, there was no equalization gurus. There was nobody to speak to get the information, right? Everybody just kind of figured it out for themselves, or they thought they were doing Mouthfill and weren't actually doing Mouthfill a lot of the time. Yeah. And
it was a slow process because you had to talk to people. You had to get out and listen and take in what you heard and find the right people who could not only do the skills but get it across to other people. That's part of the challenge.
Yeah.
Is finding a way to explain it so that other people understand it.
And I think that's a true value in tools, because you can only explain so much, because in the end, the people need to feel when it's right and when it's wrong. And the tools can really help them to build confidence in knowing they're doing something correctly, that they can do it. And it gives us feedback. We'll be able to see quite easily if they're doing something right or doing something wrong.
That's what I find most useful about these tools that we're going to talk about, is from an instructor's point of view, you can really see clearly what they're doing from the feedback you're getting from the tool.
Yeah.
And that's really useful because we don't have X-ray vision. There's ways you can see what their tongue's doing from outside, but the Otovent with the balloon, for example, really gives you good visual feedback.
Yeah.
I like it.
Yeah. So for those watching video, this isn't an Otovent brand. My student of mine 3D printed this with my logo.
Oh yeah, cool.
But essentially it's something that can hold a balloon. It has a hole in the middle. You can flash something up for the video so you can see a bit more in close what it looks like. And you can do different equalization training with it. Essentially, for anything to go into the balloon, the soft palate needs to be open.
Yeah, if the balloon's...
That tells us the soft palate's open. Different exercise will tell us what's happening with the tongue and the glottis. Well, the only thing it really shows is that soft palate is definitely open.
Yeah. When it's plugged into the nose, yeah. One thing that I think a lot of people miss, they assume an Otovent is a complete unit with this plastic piece and a balloon. But I've had people who are non-head down equalizers, who are complete Valsalva. And I've actually taken the balloon off because they're not even at the stage where they can start to use the pressure of the balloon. So they can't even grasp that yet. Yeah. And with just this piece, you can do so much to it. Like a really good example is trying to break the link between tongue movement and jaw movement, trying to separate them. Some people, and that's a hard one because every time we're talking, we're moving our tongue and our jaw. Mm-hmm. And if you want to separate and get tongue movement, I've had people literally bite this plastic piece in their teeth.
Oh yeah.
It completely immobilizes the jaw. Some people cannot do that. So with this, you get them for a few days, just biting this in the teeth, using the tongue on its own, and then you remove this, and it works quite well.
Yeah, that's a good point. The Otovent was originally designed to be used with a balloon. It was designed for kids that have sticky ears, so when they go up in airplanes, the ears don't equalize, and this internal pressure also stretches out the eustachian tube and helps to solve that problem. But we can use just the Otovent with a variety of different ways. So this is kind of the basic ingredient to a lot of the different equalization tools that we use. We just kind of adapt this Otovent because this Otovent helps us to see the pressure that's happening in the nasal cavity. In the typical way that it was used with the balloon, I generally don't like to use it for beginners because we have this back pressure and it essentially makes doing the different exercises or equalizing in the different ways harder. Because you have this extra back pressure pushing against everything, pushing on the glottis.
Yeah, and if someone is coming to you with like zero awareness of the glottis and how to keep it closed, then the Otovent the balloon's just going to push straight through. And
it's overwhelming, and people will just do whatever they have to do to kind of keep the air in the cheeks and keep the air in the balloon. Normally that's going to mean sealing off the tongue or sealing off the soft palate. So once people have some basic awareness, I use this to kind of build confidence for people that they can create a lot of pressure and they can resist this back pressure.
Yeah.
So for me, even though it's the first one we're talking about, it's a little bit more of an advanced technique.
Yeah. So I think there's a few different ways you can start with it. You know, with just the plastic piece on its own. Another good tip is when you're learning certain drills is to use an old balloon, something that's stretched out, you know, or a bigger balloon, so that the pressure's not so extreme. A brand new Otovent balloon straight out of the packet is actually quite a lot of tension. It just makes your life a bit more difficult.
Yeah, absolutely. And also something else is the more inflated the balloon is, the less pressure you get from the balloon. If you just fill, people who are watching aren't really going to be able to enjoy this bit, but if you fill so the balloon's just about inflated, there's going to be more back pressure than if you fully inflate the balloon. So there I feel more than if...
that's slightly easier.
So for beginners, it can be nice to fully inflate the balloon, and then when it's time to like overload the exercise, you can have the balloon just slightly inflated.
But I think another thing with the Otovent is to pick your exercises, be specific with what you're trying to work on, and there's always just pick 2 or 3 exercises, but stick to them. I think that's important because you can get overwhelmed with doing all sorts of acrobatics with these balloons. You only really need to work on small things at a time. I do see some people they have no sort of structure to the drills they're doing. And if you pick just a few and stick with them, you'll progress a lot quicker.
Yeah.
I think the frequency at which you practice EQ drills is really important as well. It's useless doing nothing for a week and then doing 2 hours the night before your course. It just doesn't work. We're learning motor skills here, and the only way they progress is by I think it's called the 4x5 rule. So it's 5 minutes or 4 or 5 times a day for 4 or 5 minutes. That kind of frequency will really help.
And when you're using the tools, you have to set aside some time, or you have to be carrying the tool with you.
That's
also
the
plenty
important
of drills that you can do without the tools. So if you just find yourself, waiting for a bus, or you just have some spare time, then just with the fingers you can very easily start to practice equalization. Or once you have the awareness, just moving the different parts of the mouth and throat, just to build that awareness.
I think have it out. What I did, I actually put it next to my bathroom mirror. So every time I went to the loo, I'd wash my hands and pick it up and do the drills.
Bang out some drills.
And all of a sudden you find you've spent 4 or 5 times throughout the day you've done your drills, rather than forgetting about it and thinking, shit, I need to go to bed.
I'm trying to fit in 20 minutes. Cool. So that's the Otovent.
Other EQ tools are available. Otovent is a brand. We're not endorsing any particular brand.
Yeah, of course.
Unless
quite a few people have jumped onto the bandwagon.
There's a few now, especially with 3D printers. I mean, anyone who works in an office space with 3D printing can knock one of these up.
Useful tool, and sort of the base ingredient to a lot of different tools that we can adapt to help people. So Otovent is good for isolating the different parts that we use to equalize, whether it's the cheeks or the jaw or the throat. That's how I like to describe the different parts, just super basic. Tongue as well. But for once you have this ability to equalize with the different parts, ability to keep the tongue down, soft palate open, glottis closed, then the tricky thing becomes managing the air.
Yeah.
So you bring up the air, you have however much, and then most tools that I like to use, it's more to do with when the correct time to equalize with cheeks is, when the correct time to equalize with jaw is, and when the correct time to bring the air behind the tongue is. So Otovent with the balloon isn't going to be able to do that because you'll always have like a fixed volume of air. Yeah. Unless you're slowly just putting the air into the balloon, but it's not my preferred way to practice management.
Yeah, I think for isolation it's ideal. Learning, because I think that's an important part, to break the link between the main parts of the pumping system, break it and then build it up individually. So definitely for isolation, but I get what you're saying about you don't experience that loss of volume as you would when you're going deeper.
Yeah. So next, I've got my EQ tool here.
Yeah.
This, I mean, we can definitely endorse because it's so useful for teaching, amazing tool. And what it does, you can have it like further up or further down. You have it in the nose, just the same as the Otovent, and it's going to slowly leak air. So instead of the volume of the air reducing because of the pressure as you go deeper, the volume air is going to reduce because you lose air like through the Otovent hole. The super nice thing about it is it also sends a Bluetooth signal to your mobile phone, and this shows you exactly how much pressure you make like every second or within every second. It's like real time. So the feedback is amazing, especially for teaching. Nobody can hide anything with the Otovent. And even if they try and deny it, you can like pull up the screenshot and you can show them exactly like when they fucked up.
Yeah, it's a nice tool. I've only used like Friends. I don't own one myself, and I haven't got one yet. But from what I've seen, I really want one.
Yeah.
And they're useful. Also, what I quite liked about the fact that the air does leak out is that with increased pressure like that, it forces you to do the compressions slowly, which I think is really useful for people building awareness. With the balloon, people tend to go through jaw, cheeks, tongue, and reverse quite quickly.
Yeah.
But when you're pushing out against a pressure, it forces the slowness of it, which helps develop awareness.
Yeah, absolutely. It teaches you that patience with your equalization and to only switch between the different locks when it's time.
Yeah.
And from my experience, that's one of the biggest mistakes people make. They switch too soon or they switch too late.
Yeah.
And this can lead to problems either way.
Yeah.
Either soft palate closing or losing air.
Yeah.
So amazing tool. I mean, I basically use it for everybody.
Okay.
At some point, it's how I can check and see super in depth, because I can normally see with all the different equalization tools, I can see a lot, but with this, there's no hiding anything. And a big problem that people have when they're learning Mouthfill is reverse packing.
Yeah.
Especially at the end when they're just managing small amounts of air. And with this, you can even see like tiny decreases in pressure.
Okay, so that's when they're starting to move around, search for air.
Yeah, where they're expanding instead of contracting. And so for them to see themselves, it's good. For me to see, it's good, and we can start to deal with that problem.
I think I might be going shopping for one of those. Yeah, you sold it.
Yeah. So if anybody wants one of these, they're expensive. That's the thing. I think about 165 euros. If you're an instructor teaching Mouthfill, I can definitely recommend it. The only problem is if you get it and you don't know how to use it, you've pretty much wasted 165 euros.
Yeah.
If you get it and you've got like some experienced coach who knows how to freedive, who knows how to teach freediving, we both do distance coaching, little plug. So we can give you exercises and help you to analyze the charts to see like what should happen and when. And otherwise, I mean, you'll just keep making the same mistakes you always made. You get to look at a graph which doesn't make any sense to you, and it's kind of like useless. Yeah. So this isn't gonna teach you to equalize, but it helps somebody else to teach you how to equalize.
I was surprised about how solid it was made. because a lot of the time, I mean, it's a cottage industry. I mean, he's not producing 10,000 of these a year. Yeah. He's producing a few hundred, if that. Yeah. And it's really solid, man. The workmanship is really nice.
Yeah, mine's been going like 3.5 years now and still going strong.
No this is the first version.
Yeah.
Okay, so the top screws to increase or reduce the resistance. I think the new ones with a red plastic piece, they can pull out at certain heights and stuff like that.
Yeah, he has different colours.
Okay.
But yeah, the new one I think is not quite as good as the old one because you only have 3 settings for how quickly you lose the air. Okay. Whereas this one, because you can really fine tune.
Yeah.
So like, I don't often use it when you lose air very quickly. Normally it's good to practice so you lose air very slowly, because on a deep dive you lose air very slowly.
Yeah.
Especially at the end of the dive when you're going through TKH lock. So the cool thing about this is I can have it so you're barely losing air, and then TKH can last a minute or more, which is realistic. Whereas if you have it a little bit, so it's losing air a little bit faster, you move through cheeks and jaw, and that's kind of like real time. But then when it's time to go into T, that air is not going to last very long.
Yeah, I guess it's also these tools. I mean, the Molchanov's adjustable EQ tool does a similar thing. It lets the air flow out, and I guess that's probably quite good training for keeping for learning constant pressure, because you can constantly have to keep the tubes open while the air escaping is simulating the loss of volume.
Yeah. I mean, the EQ tool can do that as well, but I think the Molchanov's is something like 20 euros or 30 euros maybe, and this is 165.
Yeah, but you don't get an app.
You don't get the app.
With the Molchanov.
You don't get as much feedback.
And that's another thing about the EQ tool that surprised me, is the app is really not glitchy at all for something that's a small business. Yeah, he's done a really good job with the programming on that. Yeah. It never fails.
Yeah, it's great. So a little thing that I did. So the Molchanov tool, it looks like an EQ tool, except there's a thing on the bottom, and you can screw it in or screw it out, and that's gonna adjust how quickly you lose the air. Like, you don't get the feedback, you don't get the graph, but you lose air from the mouthfill and you get to practice management. I made this thing. So
this is cool.
Freedive Passion only has this cool tool, which you can attach to the bottom of your Otovent or whatever version you have, and then this little tap here you can use to adjust like how quickly or slowly you lose the air.
Like you've retrofitted that off something. What's that from? Is it a blood pressure valve?
Yeah, it's a pressure release valve.
Okay.
Yeah, and then this bit is from a oxygen tube.
Okay.
And it's just lucky that it just fits perfectly.
Yeah.
So again, you get to practice the reduction in volume of air. And then I have a slightly different variation. So this one, because you just set how quickly you want to lose the air, it's only going to lose air at one speed. But if I have somebody that I'm coaching and I want things to be a little bit more realistic, then I can have them doing the equalization, and then I control the speed. So nice. At the beginning, it can be a little bit faster, as it will be, and then once I see them switch into T-lock, I can make it even slower. So that's really nice. Or even I can stop the release of air and help them to understand how the volume should feel when it's time to switch between the different locks.
That's nice. That's quite useful. I like that you can change the pressures mid compression. Oh, there's more things I'm going to be shopping for.
This is super cheap to make.
Yeah. And I suppose that brings us on to the Molchanov's tool, which we don't have one here.
Yeah, we don't have one, but I think we've described what it can do quite well.
Yeah, it's quite. It's a nifty little thing. It's very small. Yeah, there's a screw adjustment on the bottom to increase or decrease pressure.
Yeah, or you can just have the balloon like a normal Otovent.
Yeah.
I think they could make it better. It's a little bit fiddly to try and get the right setting.
Yeah.
It's either like too fast or not moving at all. It's like really delicate.
Yeah, whereas
this
little metal valve that you kind of customized is really precise, isn't it? It stays where it is. You can make like literally millimeter by millimeter adjustments.
Yeah.
Yeah, there's a difference there, big difference.
So other tools that we like, a super simple one is just to have a nose clip on but not fully sealed.
Yeah,
And again, it's going to slowly leak air out of the nose and you get to practice your management.
Yeah.
The one I just spoke about and the mulching of and just having the nose sealed, it's pretty much until you have a very good awareness of how pressure feels, it's only going to help you with management. And one mistake a lot of people make is over-pressurizing.
Yeah, of course, yeah.
Or holding too much pressure between each equalization if they do sequential, or just holding too much pressure in general if they do constant pressure. So EQ tool, Uber EQ tool is good for that because they can see.
Yeah.
But I think the bubbler is the best because they get punished.
Yeah.
Right? If you're trying to make the mouthfill last 1 minute, 1.5 minutes, and you're over pressurizing, you lose all your bubbles, and it's never going to work.
Yeah. So what Harry means by the bubbler is an Otovent connected to a tube, and the tube goes down into some water, which my lovely assistant will wheel in. It's like a magic show now.
Yeah. So I like it. I like using all different tools. It keeps people interested. And different tools are good for different things, like we've been describing, what you can use the balloon for, what you can use the EQ tool for, or the mulch knobs. And this bubbler is the same. It's got it's got value. It's not good for everything, but it's definitely got value because people get instant feedback. They can see the bubbles, they see when they're doing good. They see when they're not. So essentially, we use water in any type of container. So I've made this like steroid enhanced superpowered giant thing because I often teach like up to 4 people, so I can have 4 people working on the bubbler at once.
Yeah, if you're making one of these at home, you literally just need a bottle of water. Undo the top, stick the tube in. But yeah, for teaching 3-4 people at once, this massive fish tank is ideal.
Yeah, and how deep you have the tube going into the fish tank or whatever it is that you use dictates how much pressure you're going to need to push out bubbles. For most types of management training, we'll just have it the minimum depth that we need to open up the ears. So this is teaching you to create just enough pressure to open up both ears. Each time you lose a bubble, you lose air from the mouthfill, so it also helps you to train your management.
Yeah.
The biggest downside, I would say, to the bubbler is when you take your fill, you're going to fill the mouth to a higher amount of pressure than what you need to equalize the ears if you fully pressurize the mouthfill. So all that air is just going to be lost right away. And then from that point, you can just start to equalize normally.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, with the bubbler connected to your nose, it's a really good way to check your fills. If you're filling with soft palate open or closed, it's quite a dead giveaway. Or if you're reverse packing, if your coordination between glottis and the reverse pack is off, you're going to see water being potentially sucked up the tube. That's a really clear giveaway that your glottis isn't opening at the right time. Or the opposite, you're going to be bringing up and you're going to have air escaping out of the nose into the mask, perhaps losing it while you're filling and stuff.
I think water's going to come up no matter what with a reverse pack because you're making a negative pressure, right?
Yeah, but I think what I'm trying to get at is someone reverse packing with a mask. You want that soft palate shut, otherwise it's kind of causing a vacuum against the mask. If you're traveling down quick, you don't want that to happen.
Okay, if the hand's free.
Yeah,
that makes sense. So this is going to be boring for people just listening, but I'll just do a quick demonstration of the bubbler.
So is that's the minimum pressure you need? I'm watching the needle. We've got a pressure measuring device hooked up to this system, and you're flickering just under 20 or something like that.
I think I can get away with less.
Yeah.
Yeah, I can definitely get away with less. But then, like I said, the more you fill, the more pressure you make.
Yeah.
So I'll be starting with like half of a mouthfill.
Yeah.
60% of a mouthfill.
This is something that might be interesting. How when you're getting people to first start to learn to fill and bring air up for mouthfill purposes, do you encourage them to fill as much as they can, or do a small fill just to learn the technique and management?
I start with a small fill because 90% of the time they fill and then close the tongue against the soft palate.
Yeah, that's
so the first
really
thing I need
common
to get them to do is to be able to fill without closing the tongue.
Yeah.
So we practice like that because as well people normally feel uncomfortable to be completely full.
Yeah.
Right, so it's already stressed, so they can't focus on this tongue thing. And then once I see they can do that, I get them to fully fill and then try and close the tongue. And what they'll feel is it's impossible.
Yeah, because that pressure in the mouth is just messing with your control of the tongue.
Yeah, exactly. You trying to move the tongue is reducing the volume inside the throat and the oral cavity, which obviously increases pressure, and then you either swallow or you lose the air through the lips. So I kind of build up to it.
Yeah, definitely. I completely agree with that. I think a lot of people are obsessed with taking as big a mouthful as possible, even to the point where they're using their fingers on their lips to increase a bit of space so you can get a bit more. But the truth is, vast majority of people don't need so much air. They need to work on the management. The physics is there. The physics doesn't change, but the management techniques do.
Yeah.
I'm filling at my alarm's at 27. I'm probably finishing my last top up by 29:30, and I've got air at 1:13. Air was still in my mouth. Plenty.
I think a lot of people make the mistake of not filling enough. On the dives,
opposite end
they're
of the scale,
actually starting with like 60-65% air. They move air, and they feel air in the cheek, so they think they're full, but actually it's, and then they wonder where the air's going, like why it's going down. It's just one thing. I do like to work on that, and then often they'll be like, yeah, but I feel uncomfortable, and I'm like, it doesn't have to be uncomfortable.
No.
This feeling for you now creates the feeling of discomfort.
Yeah.
But it doesn't always have to have that if you train in a proper way and you just change what this feeling means. And it doesn't last long. It lasts 5-10 meters, and already the volume has
and
gone
the
down,
volume's
right?
immediately shrinking.
But I think for beginners, they don't need to fully fill if they know how to manage. I mean, you can get from mouthfill at 20, and you can go to 70, 80 like quite easily with just an okay management of air. But to get deep, you gotta fully fill.
Yeah, you gotta fill. Yeah, that was one thing. When Dive Eye came along, we could really see what people were doing down there, and one of the first things I noticed was how many people are actually using their fingers on their lips, just to create a bit of extra space and get that little bit extra air. And I'm not sure how essential that is, but it's something people are doing, so there must be some utility in it.
Yeah. I mean, I've experimented myself. I'll fill as much as I can, and then I'll bring the finger to the lips and see if I can bring up more.
Yeah, I'm not sure. You're talking like such minute bits of air. But then if it gets you one extra EQ, but then I've always been from the school of diving where you shouldn't end your dive because your EQs run out.
Yeah.
You end the dive because the end of the rope stops you.
Yeah, exactly.
With 3 or 4 EQs still left to go.
And that can definitely just be like a whole other topic.
That could be a whole other
talk, right? But I'm the same. If you're just hitting the bottom and EQ is over, then you could be spending your time in a better way than doing deep diving at that moment. You need to train your equalization.
And EQ is definitely the number one most pressing, most common problem with people. So in reality, looking at it logically, we should be spending most of our time working on it. But I think very few people do.
They try and fix it as they're increasing the depth in general.
Yeah.
If you increase depth, you increase stress. If you're more stressed, you're less focused, and then for sure it's not going to work. And I think it's also easy to think CO2 tolerance or equalization and separate everything.
Yeah.
But in truth, it all comes together. If you work on technique, you do your drills just with what you physically have to do in the water. You don't need to think about that so much. We only have so much processing power in each moment. So the less you need to think about on the dive, the more you can focus on equalization, which is the issue, right?
Yeah.
If you're increasing too fast and you're stressed, you're not going to be able to think about equalization.
Absolutely,
it's endless things.
But it also it highlights the importance of dry training. You know, for the first few years of freediving, I was stuck in London and I was coming out for 1 or 2 diving trips a year. If I'd had known back then how important dry training could have been, I could have been doing months of dry EQ drills, months of it.
Yeah.
So that when I arrived somewhere like Dahab for my diving trip, I wasn't spending a week working on EQ. You know? The muscle memory was kind of there. I'd have it half kind of learned already. So I think there's a lot more people now offering online EQ checks and stuff like that. And if you find someone that's good, it can be really beneficial.
Yeah, and if you're listening to this, you found the guys.
Coincidentally, that wasn't even I didn't even mean that. But yeah.
Don't worry, I'm more experienced. I got my little segue into the...
nice. So yeah, we both do online EQ training, which I can't really emphasize enough how important that is.
Yeah, look, the vast majority of people that come to me for coaching in person or to do the distance coaching for equalization, I'll tell them, do a mouthfill, do 10 equalizations, let go of the nose. And right away that tells me they never did mouthfill.
Yeah.
Because what's meant to happen doesn't happen.
Yeah.
So 90% of people I meet think they're mouthfilling and aren't.
Yeah.
If you mouthfill and equalization feels harder at depth, like it starts to become challenging, you're not mouthfilling. When you have the air and you know how to use the air, equalizing at 100 feels just as easy as equalizing at 20.
Absolutely, yeah.
So equalization is an issue. Get over it. It's boring. Freediving becomes much more interesting when equalization is no longer an issue.
Yeah,
then you can start to explore other things.
Yeah.
I think I don't have any more tools. I think that's everything that I use.
There's kind of the 4 main things. I mean, it's the Otovent, the Molchanov's EQ tool. What exactly is this called, Andreas?
EQ tool.
It's called the EQ tool. The
Uber project EQ tool.
The Uber, from Uber project. And then the tube, connecting everything together with the tube, and I guess the pressure restriction device that you've kind of retrofitted.
What did we call it? We called it the passion pump or something like that.
Oh, so you got it off a personal pump? Off your personal pump?
Yeah, my personal pump. I can highly recommend that as well.
Yeah, and then a few little add-ons, and then you combine everything with some water in a bottle or a giant fish tank like Harry uses. But for diagnostic, from an instructor's point of view, these things are really useful, and also from a learning point of view. But you need to know how to use them properly. Yeah. Otherwise, you are literally just blowing up a balloon through your nose. It's pointless.
The amount of people that are just breathing from the lungs to inflate and deflate. So, like we can say, the important thing is you need to know how to use all these different tools. Are you going to continue to make the same mistakes you always made? Yeah. But tools are very good when used properly.
Yeah, absolutely.
There's plenty of other stuff that we do, like equalization drills, which don't use these, but I think we don't need to talk about that now. We can save that for another day.
Well, that would be a good subject for another podcast. In water EQ drills. Yeah. I think that's good. We've covered what we wanted to cover. I hope everyone found that useful. We'll post pictures of all these little gadgets that we've been talking about, so it's clearer for people listening. so you can have an idea of actually what we're talking about. Maybe even some guidelines on where to get your tubes, how to fit the parts together. But my girlfriend always says it's a funny thing with freediving, how much of it is DIY.
Yeah.
She said the first time she saw a neck weight, she was like, "You guys make that yourself? Like, isn't there someone making them? Don't you go and buy it?" And I was like, "Yeah, we have to make stuff like this ourselves."
It's changing these days.
It
like,
is
the
changing.
more popular freediving becomes, the more like now you can buy like cool made neck weights, but I still use my
Yeah, I
self-made
still
neck weight.
like making them out of an old inner tube and stuff.
Yeah, I still have a self-made lanyard, and I think it's actually superior to most of our lanyards. Yeah, that can be another talk.
That could be another talk.
Those old boys, how things have changed.
Yeah.
All right, guys. So I hope you enjoyed it. I hope it was really useful. Just gonna say goodbye. See you next time.
Thank you very much for listening. I've been Gary.
Harry. Like, share, subscribe, and I'll see you all next time.
Yeah, see you next time. Thanks for listening.
Fucking nailed it.
Wasn't recording. Fuck.